Well, good afternoon out there in home service world. That's our world. That's who we deal with is. And the name of our broadcast is the CVC Home Service Success Network, sponsored by CVC Success Group. And today, Brandy can't be with us today. She's teaching a class there in the Learning Law. So we've invited back our buddy Randy Sperling because, hey, we're just going to make him a regular for long because he brings so much to the show here every single week. So it's myself, it's Randy's going to be on today, it's going to be Cheryl on, and it's going to be Josh Kelly on today. And we're going to talk about something that probably is affecting your bottom line. And how do I know that? Because I go in and look at companies and do analysis and look at it from what we call a 30,000 foot view from above. And this is the thing that I find everywhere. Waste is rampant. Waste, and we're going to talk about the waste and the things that are there. But this is what I want you to realize going in. So to start with this, you may have seen me show this before, but this is a picture of $100 bill that is stamped with waste on it. And I want you to think for a minute, where does the money come from to replace that waste? I can tell you exactly where it comes from. It comes from your bottom line profits. And the lower your net income is, the more dollars it takes, such as I'm holding up 10 $100 bills, and you can see they're stamped with waste because what it costs if you have a 10% net profit is for every dollar of waste you got to raise 10 sales dollars. If it's you on a 20% net, then it drops tremendously. It's down to $5. 15% net costs you $7.50. And if you're only at a 5% net, guess what? It's $20. $20 in sales. And what we see all the time, we see people, and what they're doing is they're going after higher sales. And at the same time, this is another little thing I use, which is an hourglass. So what's happening is just like in the hourglass where the sand is going down to the bottom of the hourglass, if you look at these businesses, profit dollars are going right through the business owner's fingertips. They're just going away. And this is what I see. We get so used to waste, we just don't even realize it. It's happening. We just learn to accept it. Now, let's go a little deeper. As I talk about waste, you got to understand that when a study is done of a company, the average waste is 5% in materials and 95% in man hours. 95% of the waste in every company survey will usually average out at 95% of the waste. And what often happens is we find companies with a waste factor of 10%, 15%, even as high as 20%. Now, to cycle that in, let's say that you're a $1 million company and you're having a waste of 15%. Do you realize that's $150,000 in waste, which is rolling right through your fingertips? So today we're going to talk about how you solve this. And I'm even going to give you an opportunity to send in to get a process completely free of charge. There's no sale here in this. And I'm going to share with you a process that you can track, measure, and cost this waste. Because you got to get this down because, hey, guys and gals, this is your retirement fund that's going away. This is the money where you could invest into your business. This is the money that you could raise your compensation to attract a better level of people. You can attract more people by offering better benefits. So, Randy, you're our guest today. So I'm going to let you go first here. What's your thoughts as I'm talking about all these shocking numbers about waste? What's going through your head right now?
Well, I'm glad that you said it's 95% labor because as a service-based company, we don't have a ton of product. So waste on the product side is so small, we're not paying attention to it. We're aware of it, but we're not tracking it that bad. It's built in. The labor side of it, We use a simple form, and we have it written on our warehouse wall. It's 15 minutes a day is 65 hours per year per person. And we know that our overhead costs us $102 an hour out the door every hour, not just on the job. And when you leave the shop, when you're on vacation, when you're being trained, all of our numbers together are $102 an hour per person. So if I have 10 service trucks on the road, that's a $66,000 loss of just profit.
Just from that little bit of delay.
15 minutes. 15 minutes. Yep. And I'm not expecting people to just hustle and bustle 15 minutes extra all day. It really came down to, I think Josh will like this. Years ago, we used paper timesheets, but then we upgraded to systems and software, and we found labor shortage. Like, not shortage while losing people, tightening up the payroll costs in the imaginary 15 minutes a day of like, well, I thought I worked till 4. No, you didn't. It was 3:45. You can work till 4 and do something, but don't bill me till 4. And that 15 minutes was costing $60-some thousand a year.
And you know, Randy, before we came online and we went live today, you were even talking about why purchase a new truck. I mean, a new truck today, man, that's $50,000, $40,000. I mean, it blows my mind. I see somebody paying $80,000 for a pickup truck these days.
Yeah.
So, are you a business owner that replaces vehicles because of the potential for downtime in those vehicles?
100%. Our biggest thing is that we are already running a full schedule with a pretty good lead, and we do keep 2 backup service trucks. But you still have to manage the downtime of these vehicles, shuttling them to a repair shop, which we have a great relationship with our repair shop. I mean, they put us ahead of everybody. And then you costly repairs over and over and over again. It's even as simple as, like, if you can use a van for 4 years, fantastic. But right now, with the shortage of vehicles, we're seeing ourselves use vans that are 6 and 7 years old, being flatbedded away from a customer's home, not being able to finish the service call. So now we know that they're not billing that day. We're paying $400, $500 for the flatbed, any repairs on top of it. I just would rather have all brand new vans because we don't have the manpower in our office just to kind of move broken vans around. Like, I'm not into that, you know?
Yeah. And that's a regional term. Down here, we call it on the hook because but what we're talking about is we got to have a rollback. We got to have a record. Something's got to pick up that truck, right? And hold it into that shop.
Yeah. And you know what else too is if you're going to be putting yourself out there as a professional company, people, the customers and clients who may need to be home to meet you, they're taking time away from their own priorities. And if you can't show up, or if you have to leave in the middle of a service call because your van, that seems like the most simplest thing that you should have solved in your business.
No kidding. We got a comment from a Facebook user. We've seen a decrease in transaction and an increase in ticket and somehow more waste from poor planning and damaged inventory. It piles up to a dollar amount I can completely put a method into. And then I've got another one, and we're going to talk about this. I am interested in the metrics on when I replace. So that's fantastic. So Cheryl, let's go over to you. You run a manufacturing company. That means you're buying materials, you're manufacturing a product. How big is waste in your manufacturing business, IBD Outdoor Rooms?
As far as the product, not a lot. I'm a pain. Okay. If it fits something, you use it. We don't trash it unless we have to. I mean, hardy board's not terribly expensive unless you throw it away on a regular basis. Years ago, we would go look and the waste bins would be full and there would be big enough pieces they could do it. So I got a little irate. And now they're put to the side and they're used. Our metal's the same way, except for the one last strip when we're cutting our blanks that we can't use for anything except just little clips. We don't throw things away. We don't have metal to haul off or anything. Like everywhere else, ours is our labor loss, and it's not so much with the people there, but it's when you lose a person, the amount of money and time and training that went down the drain because maybe they weren't in the right seat or because you didn't keep them happy while they were there. I mean, that to me, that's our biggest loss is if we have to lose someone that's trained.
Yeah. And as we talk about this, I'm going to share with you a system to track and measure this today and what we call a post-mortem inspection. We'll talk about that. But let me give you, for instance, recently we had a client that had ordered a custom product. The custom product cost them approximately $225. And whenever they did the replacement of the $225 piece that had been misordered due to an employee mistake, the total cost in the post-mortem inspection was over $2,200.
Yeah.
And this is when we do the post-mortem, we analyze all the costs that were required, the time to go remove it, the time to order again, the freight to get it in, the office time, all of these things came into play. I had another client one time, and he was really on the waste track, and he made me listen here. But he figured out that if they made a trip, it was called a field rescue, and had to go to a job site to take a $10 part. The average cost on that was $120 to go out to refill what that technician needed in the field. So we're going to give you the answers today. We go into this. So your background, Josh, is you came from a retail and a service industry, from a chimney sweep inspection, sweeping installation company. How big was waste in Tri-County Energy and Magic Broom and those operations? Was waste a monumental thing there?
Oh yeah, it is. One of my favorite, or least favorite, I should say, was getting too many people involved in a problem. Right?
Okay.
It doesn't take 4 people to research a part. It doesn't take 2 people to call a customer back. Those are just some of my favorite ones of just, hey, you can do this. You don't need anybody else involved.
Okay. Let me ask you a question, Josh. How much product was sitting in your boneyard? And the boneyard is the things that you ordered that sat there, they might have been misordered. They could have been
Stale products.
They've outdated, whatever. I mean, how much money are we talking sitting in the boneyard at Tri-County?
20,000.
20,000 easy. And every once in a while, you probably just throw this junk away, don't you?
About every 5 years.
About every 5 years.
Yeah, because eventually it's at a point, it's like, okay, we're never going to sell it. I spend more money just moving it around than what it's worth. I know what you're talking about before, a misordered chase pan. And in that instance, in those, Christ, you just said the word. The number of people it takes to figure out what caused a chase pan to be misordered takes probably 5 man hours, I would say, just to, okay, did we have bad measurements to begin? Did we transcribe a number? What happened there? As part of our processes, I will not let the office staff transcribe onto another company's form. Like I will not do business with that vendor just because I'm worried about transcription issues or bad handwriting or anything like that. I'm like, I don't care. We just won't do business with them. If they don't want to use our forms that are typed and, neatly presented, for us, I won't deal with them.
Right. So, Randy, going back to you, one of the things you said was that in your businesses, much of it is labor, very little materials. I mean,
right.
And I understand that. But when you look at it, when I say this, so your waste could be 97, 98% in a business of that nature because you don't have holdable products to sell. Now, in your waterproofing business, I'm presuming there are products involved in waterproofing. Would that be correct?
That is correct. Yep. They're and we're pretty good on that. They have a lot of parts that are consistent across the board on any project, and then specific parts. And Dave, I don't know if you had the chance to meet Dave Crawford.
Every time I am there, he is running across the parking lot.
If not on some kind of like scooter or wheelie or weird, I mean, he's funny. Like he's a multitasker, but he's extremely good about pre-ordering products ahead of time. We do not keep a high inventory. We have this balance of enough inventory that we're not running for one piece, but we're not stocking 100, right? So we don't want to be running to Home Depot for one connection. That's a complete waste of time. And it's not even just the physical time, it's mental time. You don't need that. So we keep a pretty good forecast on what the jobs are coming and have the products there on hand.
Yep, got it. This thing hit me a couple years ago, and I've told the story before. And when it hit me was getting to know my friend who is deceased now, Charlie Quayle. And Charlie was a person that introduced me to lean principles. And one of the things that I saw from Charlie was I walked in his office one day, and he had this 4x8 sheet of styrofoam up on the wall. And he was drawing lines to boxes into another box, into another box, into another box, and it just kept going. And I said, Charlie, what in the world are you doing? He said, that's the flow of information in our company. In other words, this is when the information passes from one person to the next. And he said, what we have found is that the number one cause of waste, which he called fumbles and bad handoffs, was when information transferred from one person to another person, they didn't have a good system of documentation to pass that along to the other people. So that was where I got into this. So Cheryl, what would you add into this waste discussion we're into today?
Well, you know me, I'm on the hiring side. So the main thing is the people that's in the business. Are they productive? Everybody, like he was talking earlier, 15 minutes isn't all that bad. You've got to do things, but it's the waste of the time from point A to point B, the steps. When we laid out the manufacturing plant, it's laid out by steps. Everything is worked out to the amount of time. I've always been an avid person believing that if you can save the seconds, you can make the minutes. So, and I think that's the biggest problem. But I think we saw especially when you owned the fireplace, we saw how much waste could be put around just because it's laid back in a corner and never seen again. So that's it. I think that's where we all get into them. And I agree with what was just put on. You haven't put it up yet, but square footage in a business is extremely expensive. You don't need a building 3 times what you've got.
Correct. That was one of the things that I saw about Charlie. Charlie set up a lean warehouse, a lean storage area. Things moved in one door and they went to the next door. And they went all the way through to be dispatched out onto the trucks. Now, Charlie had a big advantage. He had a guy by the name of Bob Arbel that came in there and was his consultant to help him to work on reduction of waste in his company. But what I find is when people start tracking and measuring this, it blows them away whenever they start tracking. But there's a system, and we're going to talk about that system in a minute, but this is what you got to do. In order to get on top of this issue, number one, Randy said something a while ago. Randy, did you say 102.50 an hour? Did I hear that correctly?
It's 102 an hour.
102 an hour. So the first thing is you got to know your cost of doing business. If you don't know your cost of doing business, you can't compute this. So you got to know, what is it costing you an hour to go out into the field and working? And from that point, like I said, we're going to share with you in this broadcast the Jerry system that I have shared with a lot of companies. And believe me, it works. And the goal is to get your waste below 1% of your gross. That's the overall goal. It would be great to eradicate 100%. I'm going to be honest with you. We're talking about human beings. That's impossible. But what you can do is set a goal, and we're going to tell you the system today to how to do it. Our buddy Chuck Roydhouse just came in here and said, for a productive result, agree as a team on standard labor time allotment per task, then add materials. Okay. So what he's talking about is a lot of times waste comes in because the job was not properly quoted. And Randy, that would fall back to what you do, where we didn't quote it and we had unexpected time. Would you agree?
I do. And what you were saying earlier about the notes from one person to the next in the conversations. I mean, we've all had kids, I believe. It's like the telephone game. you can't pass the information 7 times. You know, it's gonna be very quick and very direct and standardized. And
Yeah.
when you say that about the quoting, I have that in my notes. It's the inefficiency from the initial person who takes the call and quotes. Our quotes happen right over the phone, but if they're done wrong and the technicians are there, we're sort of like, we hold ourselves with a quote. We're not going to change it on the homeowner, but it does change the project.
Yeah, and it does. And it comes from gathering the right information. Again, we're going to give you some solutions, Dave, folks, so stick with us on this thing. So, Josh, you said a key thing a while ago. 2 people dealing with the problem. Why would 2 people deal with the problem, Josh?
Because it's twice as expensive.
No, but why would they? Why would 2 people be dealing with it?
Usually, in my experience, they're not trained, or they're lazy.
Okay.
In my experience, and it's usually, and more often than not, it was the second one. They were lazy.
Okay.
They didn't want to take accountability when something went wrong with a customer. In my experience.
Yeah. Well, here's what we know. When we trace down cost, when we trace down waste and the cost of waste, we find, Randy, there's 3 reasons. Number 1, we don't have a system. There is not a published standard in the company for people to follow. Number 2, many times we find that the system that's been written and designed does not work. Number 3, somebody simply refused to follow the system. But you got to go deeper. Is it because they weren't trained? Is it because the system is not comprehensible? Or is the problem that you got somebody that is just determined, I'm not going to follow that process? And when
or just laziness. I mean, we actually had to let go of, not had to. I mean, I made a point to let someone go because they didn't follow their checklist. Now they checked their checklist.
Yeah.
So
they
my question,
checked it, so
they checked it, right?
They lied.
Now this is the major issue, and this is why they got fired right away. They returned back to the warehouse without a ladder on top of their ladder rack.
Yeah.
So we asked, did you leave it, or did it fly off a truck and maybe kill somebody? Well, I don't know. Well, let's see your checklist. Checked off ladders on the truck and strapped. Interesting, because we use ratchet straps and tie downs and all kinds. So we're like, I'm not real sure. And, let's hope that it's not on the middle of the road. So we sent them back on the route to make sure it wasn't in the highway or off the highway. And they couldn't find it. It wasn't on the road. It wasn't at the restaurant. So waste, losing product material, liability of life, right? Like, let's be serious. And then they lied. They straight lied. They filled out their checklist. You don't lose a ladder if it's strapped correctly.
That's correct. That's all.
Or if you put it on the truck.
Right. So that goes down to a case. If you've got the process that the company's supposed to follow of how we secure this ladder to the vehicle and it goes loose, then there's a problem. Somebody didn't follow that unless we've got an error in the way that we're doing it. Okay. And this is where the processes come into play. This is where the standard operating procedures are so important. And it's also where, Josh, this is your area on helping people put together these systems. And we have to modify them at time, and you will never have the process of the SOPs 100% complete. Josh, what's your opinion on the SOP as I say those things?
Well, it's great for a lot of things because, like, I have an SOP. So if you need to leave a message for another employee, you don't handwrite it, you email it, just because there's trackability for that element. And you're not chasing that employee all over the store, which, in my case could be, you might be 5 minutes till you find them. So that's just a short one, right? And like Randy said, he went back and checked his checklist. My checklists are on a computer, so I can see who filled them out, what time, that sort of thing. Well, one thing is for me that was became a real hurdle was being a crutch, right, for the employees, because they kept asking me. I'm like, well, did you look it up? My answer would always be looking it up. Eventually, those employees work themselves out who don't want to follow the SOP, don't want to research the SOP.
Yeah, it's like I tell a lot of people, your SOPs are where you need them. When an employee comes to you and asks a question, and the answer you can give them is, what does your SOP say about that? And if it doesn't answer that question, you got to write more SOPs. Okay. This is an ongoing thing. I mean,
And
Josh,
we say that in our end, if we hear the same question twice, whether it's from a client or an employee, it's a new script for the client. And it's a new SOP standard for us.
that's exactly right. That's how you got to do it.
I actually have that written down right here, Randy.
Right. Hey, wait a minute.
That was in my notes.
Did you write that on paper, Josh?
Oh, no.
Well, it's actually my actually it says once for me in mine.
Okay.
What I do is one time.
Okay.
I mean, of course, I have 20 years experience, so I kind of know if it's a one-off. Like we had an issue with a posting thing with Service Titan. We've been doing Service Titan 10 years, and like it was a one-off weird thing. I'm like, I'm not spending the time on that to write an SOP on that. The girls in the office spent more time trying to figure out why it happened than they could have just fixed the error in literally under 2 minutes is what it took me to fix the error. And I'm like, well, can you call them and do this and that? I'm like, no. At some point, it's the first. Well, what if it happens again? It's been 10 years. It'll be okay. It won't take me that much time to write that. Take me longer to write the SOP than it did for you to actually fix the problem.
Okay. So as I promised you, here's the process. Now, what I'm going to tell you is what I'm going to share with you is not costing you a dime today. And not only that, if you like this process in a written format, you see my email address up there. You just send me an email, and I'm not going to try to sell you anything. I'm going to be more than happy to send you this written process out of how you start to track the waste. Step one, in your office, you have to appoint what I call a waste detective. This is the person that has that responsibility. Randy, you get to spend a lot of time at the lake. So there's somebody in your office with responsibility for all this crap. Am I right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Actually, there's two different people, one for residential, one for commercial.
There you go. So you got to appoint this waste detective. And this is the person that you're going to give ownership, repeat the ownership of this task to. And what we have to do is go out every day. You're going to send a group message to your team members. It's going to take a while to get this down pat, but every day your people have got to start reporting what was the waste today. Now, this has got to be a report. This is not an invitation for an ass chewing. I want to make this really clear. If you use this information to chew ass, it's going to backfire on you. This is assembling the data so you can put this together. Then this waste detective, she then or he transcribes this into a digital format. Randy, not written. We're doing digital so we can pull this up later. So every day, like today, is July 21st. So in here, we have a listing today of the waste that happened today. Goes into there. What caused the waste? What was the time lost on the waste? This waste detective then cost out the waste. And you cost out the waste of what you would sell that for. Because if you hadn't wasted this time, you would have been doing something productive. And as you do this, you look and you're going to develop the patterns. I'll guarantee you, Randy, if you track this, you'll find that the guy that lied to you about the ladders lied about other things. And what you can do from this, you can track who are the weak points in the system. Now, we also go down, and I said a while ago, it's about systems. You got to write your systems up. So here's another free gift for you that's not going to cost you a dime. Number one, send me an email. I'll send you my process for waste tracking. The other thing is, this is a free copy of my book, Standardizing Standard Operating Procedures. That's in an ebook format I just put on there. You can go to that link and you can download a copy in a digital format of this, no charge. If you want to go to Amazon and get the printed copy, hey, more power to you. I'd love you to have a printed copy. If you ever see me somewhere, I'll give you a copy of this because I wrote this book in order to get on top of this. In fact, my next book project is all about Where did my profit go? Where'd the profit go? And we're hoping to release that in the next month or two this year to help people get on top of this waste thing, because we see that people's profits are going away and they're being lost. And this is the money that you could put in to invest in real estate, right, Randy? You're a real estate investor. I've seen you do classes on how to move your profits into real estate, where you build your retirement, where you get more profit, because this is the whole thing. If you ever plan on selling that business one day, it's going to come down to one thing, and that's all about the numbers. What are the numbers of that business? If you're planning to sell it one day, you better have this stuff together. So those are all free gifts for you to help you get on top of this. Cheryl, before we end today, what else would you add in about waste today?
Well, the one thing that I have preached more on than anything else is what we call non-value added activities. These are activities or processes that they don't contribute to the product or the service quality, and it results in inefficiencies and wasted resources. It's just those small tendered things that doesn't contribute to the bottom line.
That's it. So let me give you an example of one through waste tracking. Randy, would you believe that it is going to be more profitable for your guys to fill up their vehicles in the afternoon coming in than it is going out in the morning? Tremendously more profitable. In the morning, what you're going to find is you're going to have a local convenience store that you almost have a company meeting at that store every morning, because everybody goes there to get gas. And when we go to get gas, we got to pick up some coffee. We got to get our snacks for the day. And what happens, this becomes a God-given right. I just finished a SWAT meeting this week, and it came out that every morning they should have their company meeting down at the local convenience store, because that's where everybody goes and they're not on the job site. Randy, you got your hand up, brother.
I have to say this. I am looking at a 4-acre lot that has a great location for throughway access, again, because I'm trying to trim waste, because currently it's a 20-minute run that way, correct? So from my warehouse to the throughway access, 20 minutes. Now we're 40 minutes a day per person. So there's a 4-acre lot. I can build a building. The son of a gun is in a shared driveway access to Dunkin' Donuts. So buy that property. My wife's like, this would be great. I said, well, if I buy that property, they have to get their coffee before getting in their truck. You can't go the other way around, because I'm not going to save that 20 minutes anymore.
Yeah.
I'll be happy. I'm just going to walk over and get it.
Yeah. So if you look there, Chuck Royhouse just added, do not forget that the key for this to be successful requires management to constantly inspect for what the SOP expected. The next one's going to shock you, okay?
Hey, let me add one on to one you just did, but let me pigtail off.
Hang on one second. But Jillian just said, telling our secrets. Jill, it's not just you. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. Everybody's got this problem. And then Yvette says, donut shops rule and have to be on the daily route. Not if you don't want to lose that profit, Yvette, I'm telling you. Add up. You're running 20 trucks. That donut shop becomes a monumental investment. I mean, you're only spending $80,000 a year for those donuts. You would be cheaper off to go get the stinking donuts and bring them and have them at the shop every morning. You would be ahead of the ball game. So now, Cheryl, your turn back.
Okay, I'm going to add what you just said. Get the donuts, take them back to the shop. But do you realize that you save more gas by pumping it in the morning than you do of an evening, because of the evaporation in a warm tank?
Okay, I can take that. But at the same time, what's my labor time? I'm trying to conserve that labor time, okay?
That's why I said bring your donuts in, let them get the gas.
Yeah.
How many of the businesses do you work with have their own fuel stations, like their own stationary tanks? Because we're fortunate where we live that we can buy 3 and 4 acre lots to have built buildings, and then a lot of us have our own fuel stations right in the parking lot.
Yeah. So we have somebody that's asking a question here. Jeff, Melissa Bassmer, would you please be able to address my service truck questions? It's a little off topic. Sure. Put your question in. We're going to be going off before long. So type your question in. Okay. So what were you saying, Cheryl? Randy, which one you were talking when I interrupted you?
Randy.
So I was just saying that a lot of us have our own fuel stations right on site. We get a better price per gallon, and of course, the techs are not going to get a drink and a Slim Jim while they're getting gas. And also, not that we encourage it, but we really don't want to see the additional credit card charges and then be like, "Oh, did you forget you used our card for your drink?"
Yeah.
You know.
And I've also seen companies that are now actually catering in breakfast every morning because their people were stopping for breakfast and they found out it was more cost effective. And every morning, the catering truck pulls in and drops off breakfast for everybody. And not only that, that's a pretty good benefit for your workers that can drive them into more interest there. So, Josh, what you got to add on the waste factor, buddy? Anything you want to add to this?
Whew, so many topics were covered. I would say you got to keep in mind it's always an ongoing process, and you have to be in that mentality of attacking it all the time because it never actually ends. And for me, like that, I always go back to I have ADD. You need to have someone not who is okay with doing repetitive tasks like the waste drill down. To do it, because for me, you'll burn me out into monotony doing it. Even though I created all these great systems, it was so I wouldn't have to do, repeat these things over and over and over.
Gotcha.
So it just keep going at it. As your favorite saying is to, how much does it take to eat an elephant? And it's just one bite at a time. You never actually do finish that elephant, but you may make a dent in it.
Yeah. So Randy, Jeff Bassmeyer is asking a question. I'm going to turn this one to you because I think you may be the best person on here to answer this. He says, I have attempted to restore old trucks and that never seems to work out. What age or miles do you recommend replacing? Thanks, Jeff.
So, and I'm not going to speak of brands as far as like what I prefer. We use GMC and Chevys because of the footprint, and we do excessive maintenance. Like I have a company that comes in once a month on Saturdays so that we don't have to ship the trucks for oil changes in the trucks. And then our layout in our trucks have carpet cleaning engines and air duct cleaning engines. So one Saturday a month, every truck gets those small engine oil changes done as well. So we're big on maintenance, typically 4 to 5 years. If you're running them 4 years and you're running a service-based company, you're probably going to be around that 80,000 mile point. I find that we find the most problems at 100 to 120,000 miles. You might be lucky, but I'm not trying to get lucky. I'm trying to be predictable. We want predictable profits.
Okay. So, but let's add this in. If you were in a mountainous terrain, that's going to put more stress on it. If you live where you do, which is Rochester, New York, then you're dealing with a lot more salt roads than we're going to deal with in North Carolina.
Right.
So you got to look at what you're seeing. And to me, that takes tracking what's happening and what's going on. So Jeff has another question. I think it's pretty unique there. And Randy, what would you do with the spoiled service tech? I added the word spoiled. That
I saw it.
5 to 30 years, and I buy them what they want within reason, but I could buy them for $20,000 less. As a pride and a benefit, is it worth it to let them have a truck they picked out?
I run my company, not my technicians.
And I agree with that. And I think you got to buy what's best. And to me, like I said, I added the word spoiled. No offense, Jeff, but if I am running my company and making a purchase of that magnitude, I got a problem with that. Okay. So listen, we got somebody asking questions. They're playing hooky today. And she says, I think Sperling makes a better host than me. Okay. That's from Brandy. And she said also a lot of fleet programs will keep track of your oil changes, tire changes, and all that. Okay. And then Yvette said, no, they do not own the company. You buy what is best for the company. So anyway, a lot of good information is exchanged here today. And again, you've got the link in there. I would love for you to read the book. The book is written like I talk. Okay. So you may find a couple of grammatical errors in it. I'm sorry, but I write just like I talk. And then you also have the opportunity to email me and let me send you our process for waste tracking, because this is what you got to do. If you're going to get on top of this, you got to track it, You got to measure it, and you got to come up with the systems to eliminate this. Cheryl, anything else you would add today?
Just stay on top of it. It's something that can get out of hand extremely fast.
That's it. Josh, what about you? Anything you want to add in here today?
Go digital.
Yep. Go digital. Okay. And so Jeff says, I find what is best for the company is keeping them happy. And I really appreciate the insight just the same. And I understand that, Jeff. You know, you ask for an opinion, you got to do what's best. Randy, what would be your last comment today? And before you say that, I want to tell you, brother, I appreciate you being here and taking your time with us again today. So what will be your final parting words?
No, I appreciate it too, and I really enjoy it. I think the phrase that I say a lot is just keep consistent. And I think another thing I'd like to point out is that maybe some of your listeners are thinking like, man, this is just too overwhelming. It's not that bad. It is overwhelming in the beginning, but whether you do it on paper or digital, just start with a couple items. Like anything else, track them, get comfortable with it. Maybe a light bulb will click. You'll be like, holy, I'm saving some money here. And then it's not all about cutting costs. It is just about cutting waste.
It is. And the whole principle, remember why you're in business. You're in business to get the funds, to get the money, to do the things that you want in life. And your employees are working for you, and they have their dreams. They want to buy their homes. They want to get things in this world. So that's part of responsibility. And so what you want to do is convert this waste into profit so you can then share the profits with the others that are helping you get there. Just imagine how it's going to help and how you're going to build that phenomenal team. I mean, Randy, you deal with a lot of people up in Rochester that you and I both know. The people that show care for their employees, what's the end result for them?
Just a better operations overall.
It does.
Company culture is like a phrase that we've been using sooner than I think a lot of companies in our area.
Yep. So we appreciate everybody joining us today for this episode of the CVC Home Service Success Network. Hey, let us know how we can help you. Reach out to us. If you want to get in touch with our friend Randy, hey, he's up in Rochester. You know, he's entering in, wants to help other business. We see some things happening with him down the road. Might replace him with Randy, place Randy with him. She wants out, it looks like.
We can share. It's fine.
Hey, but we can put 5 people on here, Randy. So, hey, every Friday, I'm going to start sending you more of these invitations because, my friend, you bring a lot to the table. And with that, we'll see you next time on the next episode of the CVC Home Service Success Network. Let's take those business dreams, folks, and let's turn them into your business realities.